Joe Gettle here, and I'm super excited to share with you today that I just got my ENVE MOG switched over to the brand new XTR Di2 for a 1x setup coming from Shimano GRX 2x. Now today I'm going to go over all of the parts that I needed to do this switch, and then my initial impressions after a couple training rides, and then hitting up the ENVE Grodeo gravel event, which is a 92-mile ride in Utah's backcountry with some of the chunkiest, gnarliest gravel roads, as well as some super smooth, nice pavement on that ride. Had a little bit of everything. Now first things first, all season long I've been running the Shimano GRX 2x system with Dura Ace cranks and a 52 to a 34 chainring up front, 11-34 in the rear. And while this has brought me to some awesome races, most notably taking me to my win at Belgian Waffle Ride, Utah, where I was super grateful for those small jumps in the gears as I was TTing my way off the front solo to the finish. The 2x system had also left me with some mechanical issues, most notably at Unbound, where my chain dropped and got stuck between my big ring and my front crank. So I still believe there is a place for 2x in certain races. I think overall, for myself in particular, doing a lot of the Belgian waffle rides that have single track on them and gnarlier, muddy gravel races, I do believe that 1x is a better setup. So of those parts, what has stayed the same are going to be the GRX hoods, as well as the actual brakes and rotors themselves. Didn't have to touch any of that, which made the transition to this 1x drivetrain a lot easier. And then also the cranks themselves, the Dura Ace 165. Now one thing I was able to leave behind was the battery and the seat post, which was powering the rear and front derailleur on the GRX 2x system. With the new XTR, we are completely wireless, so that makes things super nice. And that is going to lead us into the parts that I did change. So first and foremost, the rear derailleur is going to be the most important thing we changed, allowing us to get this XTR 10 to 51 cassette. And then I've got that paired up with a wolf tooth Aero chain ring in a size 52. Partly because that was all that was available from wolf tooth, but I've actually been finding it to be a pretty solid gear through the riding I've done so far. And this whole setup actually gives me a bigger range than what I had before. With a 50-51, it's a little more than 1-to-1, and then a 50-10 gives me even a taller gear than my 52-11. Now one last thing I did have to change to get this cassette on here was a Microspline hub body, so don't forget that one if you are looking to make the swap yourself. And then lastly, inside here lies the battery, so you pull this little door out, and out pops this little battery right here, which is going to give you 20 hours of shifting life, give or take, depending on how much shifting you are doing. And then you've got this awesome little light here, so when I push this indicator, a solid, steady green light means I have at least 50% left. If you get a blinking green light, you're going to have at least 25% left. And then if it is red, less than 25%, and you should definitely charge it before you go. Or what I recommend, and what I've done myself, is just get an extra battery. So I keep one battery on the charger and one battery in here, and I can just swap them as I need to. So I'm never running into that issue where I'm out of battery leading into a training ride. Now quickly going over the rest of my bike setup, which is exactly what I used for ENVE Grodeo last weekend. We've got the Garmin Rally XC pedals here, reading power to my Garmin 1040. And then I'm running ENVE SES 3.4 wheels with a Pirelli Gravel H in the rear and an ENVE Hex in the front. Sizes 45 in the rear, 48 in the front. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know I really have been liking these Pirelli tires over the last couple of years. I feel like they are a very good mix of durability and speed. However, the one thing they're for sure lacking is grip. And ahead of the Grodeo, I did hear that it was a pretty chunky, gnarly course, so I wanted a little bit more grip in the front. And then I'm also heading up to VWR Montana next weekend, and I have no idea what the course is going to be like there. So I figured this is a bit safer setup. So now that you have the full picture of my bike ahead of Grodeo, let me tell you what my initial impressions were. Now 3 days out, I did get a chance to ride it on a standard interval ride where I had some structured training up a paved canyon road, and I did definitely notice the difference in the bigger jumps between the gears. It wasn't terrible, but after riding 2x all year, It was noticeably a little bit harder to stay in my prescribed cadence zone. So that is one small downside to running this. And I can see that maybe in some flatter races that are just super small gradient changes and high speed, that having those bigger jumps between gears may be a little bit of a disadvantage over the 2x system. But I believe they're actually going to be coming out with a tighter range cassette, or I know there are actually some 10 to 45 mountain bike cassettes that I can fit on here and run for those tighter ranges. And best part with that is the derailleur just stays the same, so no need to swap anything else but the cassette. However, for where I live here in the mountains, you are going up some super steep, chunky stuff, and then you're pedaling downhill on a false flat. So I really like having the bigger range as my main gear setup, so I think I'm going to be sticking with this most of the time. And that leads me right into the ride we did last Saturday, the ENVE Grodeo. Now this event was 92 miles in the Utah backcountry. Starts at ENVE headquarters and you ride up a nice paved climb to get out of town, and then you get right onto a pretty pristine gravel climb that takes you way up to around 7,000 feet. But from there is where it gets really spicy as you get onto more of an ATV trail. That was some of the chunkiest, gnarliest gravel that I've ridden pretty much ever. And it was absolutely phenomenal having the mountain bike drivetrain for this, using the full range all the way up to that big 51 tooth gear to pick my way through some of those really technical ascents. Then following this chunky climb was the chunkiest descent on course. Super rocky. There were times you were going through just pure boulder fields. You really had to stay on your toes, and having the mountain bike drivetrain just made it super nice. Again, no chain slapping around. I didn't have to worry about switching between my big ring and little ring as it undulated, and I could just focus on going down the trail with the shifting working absolutely perfect. After that super chunky descent, the course kind of descends down, goes on and off some gravel and some pavement. Heads up a little highway climb where there was another aid station where we all stopped and ate some gummy bears, Twizzlers, and had a can of Coke. One really cool thing about ENVE Grodeo is it is not an actual race, but rather a ride where there are some time segments, so if you still want to get those competitive juices out, you can go for those. But mostly we are out there to enjoy the route and have a great experience. And the technicality of the route just makes completing the thing such a journey in itself that really it couldn't be a better place to have this kind of event. And man, I will tell you, it was an amazing change of pace to be able to still ride hard a little bit, have some fun with your friends, but then stop and enjoy the aid stations and get to talk to people from all over the country that work for ENVE, other athletes that work for them, and then lots of people that came out from the local community to ride as well. Now after this aid station came a downhill that started with a really rough and not so chunky but kind of washboardy gravel road, and then this turned into a false flat pavement where we had a absolutely ripping tailwind as I was just off the back of kind of one of the main groups of people riding together, and I was able to use that 50-10 combo to chase back up to them at 40 plus miles an hour. So that is going to be a huge advantage in the races, having that big of a gear. And then after this, we made our way up a long, gradual gravel climb, down a ripping fast gravel descent. And then we headed into the last section of the course, which involved going over a mountain pass by way of single track. So I was once again back to my 50-51 as we climbed up this absolutely beast of a single track climb. We then descended down on a single track, which started out through the woods with some kind of techie trail that had some roots and rocks sticking out that you really had to be aware of. Rock. And then it opened up into a ripping fast double track descent that was full of rocks and you really had to be on your toes. My hands were starting to get pretty tired at this point, and I almost bailed on a little cross section of rocks.
Oh, almost.
Next year I'm definitely considering putting some mountain bike tires on for this event to keep my hands and feet a little bit fresher. But all in all, it was a super fun downhill, getting to follow Truman to Glasgow as we ripped through the single track, and it really opened up to a fun, flowy section at the bottom. So with the Grodeo event all done and dusted, I will let you know that this is by far the best drivetrain that I could have bet on for that event. And it's got me really excited for the rest of the season on this bike as I tackle some gnarlier events, starting with the Belgian Waffle Ride Montana this coming weekend. Now, if you want a list of the full details on my bike, you can find that down in the description below. And if you have any questions about the setup or switching your bike over, if you already had GRX 2 by on it, just leave those questions in the comments below and I will try and get back to you on them.